10, 9, ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff.
Welcome to the Alien Probe Podcast. The report on the UFO wave of 1947 discusses the first contemporary wave of UFO sightings in this country, which reached its peak on July 6th and 7th, 1947. It includes a detailed chronology of more than 850 UFO cases from June and July, with complete references, primarily from 140 newspapers in 90 cities in the United States and Canada, but also from the files of NICAP and Project Blue Book, as well as references from a number of publications on UFOs. I'm Doug, and joining me today is Dr. Bill. Bill, what's happening?
Hey, how are you doing?
Living the dream, as always.
I just realized we spent 45 minutes talking, and probably should have been recording some of this stuff, too.
Should have just recorded the whole thing. Huh?
Yeah. While we're messing with the systems and trying to get our computers to work, I'm trying to get mine to work.
Yeah, and here I am. I don't even have you on my screen. Okay, so I think it bears mentioning in 1947 that we had the Ken Arnold, which I don't know how many times we mentioned Ken Arnold, but he was June 26. He was looking for a Marine aircraft that went down in 1946 on June 26, and then June 21st was Maury Island, which we know was Maury Island, which we know is the donut-shaped half dozen sighting, and then of course Roswell on July 5th, and we didn't lose any aircraft on that one, but Maury Island we did. We lost a B-25 after the investment, and I just thought it would bear, as we're going through this 47 thing, was kind of weird that those things came about, along with all of these sightings that, we're not going to mention all 850, but
we'll spend.
They have a hell of a graph here that shows the June and July. They've got a bar graph here, and it's interesting about it. I wonder why. I mean, we don't know why, but it's interesting that what happened in 47, or did people just start looking into the sky?
Well, I don't think it was people looking into the sky, and one of the things that a lot of people were thinking was triggered the UFO sightings was the above ground atomic bombs and the tests. So you had in July 16th, 1945, you had Trinity, which was the first test, and then on August 6th, 45, you had Little Boy was used on Hiroshima. In August 9th and 45, you had Fat Boy used on Nagasaki, which brought World War II to the end, and World War II ended in September 1945. And then in 1946, July 1, on Bikini Atoll, they had, on July 1 and July 25th, on Bikini Atoll, they had the Able and the Baker test of nuclear weapons. And then the next time that they had above-ground nuclear test was in 1948. So what a lot of people were thinking, was that the trigger for the UFO sightings was all the atomic bomb testing. But that was also sort of the, like, psychologists or psychiatrists were saying that they thought that the UFO sightings might have also been due to people's psychological reactions to the atomic bomb test and the changing technology in the world.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know. It makes sense, but now today, I know, I watched the Elizondo YouTube video. Did you see it wasn't very long, right? It was like 22 minutes or something.
The GQ one where he was interviewed?
Yes.
GQ in the UK. It was a good interview.
It was a good interview, and what I got out of that is one thing I hadn't heard him say before, he says UFOs quite possibly don't come from, or may have eons ago originally, but he's thinking that, well, he didn't, I don't know if he's thinking this, but he mentioned it, that they may have come from here. I like my inner theory, where they're underground.
Your hollow earth.
I mean, hollow earth theory, which,
yeah.
is a book I read ages ago, but the hollow earth. But, he came right out and said they could have come from here. And it kind of resonated with me in that that's a very real possibility. Then, we got the USOs on we see them. We don't see it. We do see them, but
USO is
under the
unidentified
submerged
okay.
unidentified submerged the USO. Okay. And it's and then I saw I look on as I'm getting ready for the show, I get pulled into these rabbit holes of off the coast, Point Magoo, which I believe is a naval air station. I didn't look it up, but it doesn't mention it in the article.
Yeah, I think
Point Magoo. I think Point Magoo. I believe
Southern California used to be a
SoCal
used to be a Marine Reserve air station. Because I was actually thinking about when I was going to school in LA, I was actually thinking about signing up for their and doing my weekends there. I didn't.
Yeah, and it was interesting because there's a submerged. It's a 3-mile long. I didn't send you that one, but it's a 3-mile long.
The canyon?
It's a submerged. Well, it's 2,000 feet. The canyon is much deeper, but this thing is 3 miles long, and it looks like it has pillars. And it had the, the coordinates, the geo whatever coordinates of where it was located, everything in the article.
This is the undersea.
Yeah, it's the undersea, and it's flat on top, and it's got pillars, but the pillars aren't evenly spaced, which doesn't really mean anything. But, and I didn't even really keep it up on the. I just kind of, because I'm getting ready for this, I'm like, I can't be tugged away from what we're going to want to talk about. So
is this?
I gave it.
This is some other. This is some other.
Yeah, I was looking up the dates of, the Roswell and the exact dates because I was curious how they related to one another. And this thing popped up, and I thought, oh, this is bizarre. Of course, I had to read it. And one scientist just said, "Oh, it's natural. It's not anything." And so that's where it is. I mean, nobody's gone. 2,000 feet doesn't seem that deep. I mean, I know they could have UAVs go down there, undersea drones, whatever.
It's not a big deal.
So I was just somebody I imagine eventually may look at it. Some people might say it's not worth it. It's just nothing. But my point is I just got tugged away from that because it's everything on the internet.
Well, yeah, there must have been surveys of that area. I'm sure there is, especially for submarine work.
It's 6 miles off the coast, 2,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the continental shelf, and then it goes deep, and like you were talking about, that's where I went to Catalina Island, and the helicopter, the guy sees a whale in the helicopter, so he and I don't know if I ever told his story, if I mentioned it on the show, but he hovered over this whale really close.
You were in the helicopter.
Yeah, I was in it, and there's 6 of us in this helicopter, and look at the whale, and I go, you know what? All it would take is for that thing to slap its tail up in the air, and we're in. Do you realize how deep this is? I don't really want to be in the ocean with 40. I don't know if it's 20,000 feet or whatever of water under me. I don't in a crashed helicopter that I may or may not get out of.
And an angry whale.
And then there's a giant and an angry whale. That might have got zipped by some rotor blades as it tried to slap us out of the sky. So, and everybody else, oh, look at the whale. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
I don't really want to be here. It's not, go on a boat if you need to look at this. We don't need to do it here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's deep, but there it's this structure, again, 6 miles off the coast, about 2,000 feet. So, but yeah, the Elizondo thing was interesting. He thinks it may have come from inside. And he mentioned that, and he didn't really there was no revelation. I mean, other than, that's not even a revelation,
I thought he said a couple interesting things. He said that the government had material, had UFO.
Oh, yes.
UFO
he
material.
Did. That was the other thing. And that I haven't heard from him before. He's been really close to. He didn't mention that on the UFO garage thing. If he did, I didn't catch it.
No, this is the first time I think he's mentioned that. And he also mentioned, I think he listens to the show because I talked about the shield in Roman history where they saw a shield.
Yes.
So I think
flaming shields.
Shield, yeah, and I think he listens to the show. I think he got that.
Well, he does.
Yeah,
yeah. Between him and Rogan and Bill Burr, they all listen to the show.
They all do. Of course, they do. So yeah, yeah. Where he talked about Julius Obsequians, a 4th century poet who referred to a phenomenon near Rome. Described as sunset, a circular object like a shield was seen to sweep across the sky from west to east. So yeah, of course he listens. And,
well, eventually we're going to be going further back. I mean, we start in 47, but I think you and I will probably eventually, as we get to the present day, we'll revert back to some ancient alien kind of things.
Oh, actually, there was the sightings in California of the airships at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
I picked that book up. So that's, I don't know when that was published, but I picked up that book, and that'll be an interesting thing to look into.
All those UFO books in your bookshelf behind you? Or is that right? You got all your books?
Yeah. It's
quite a collection.
Yeah, but it's interesting because each shelf is only 10 years. So it's like this is 30 years of UFO books, and each shelf is like, I don't know, 2.5 feet long. And the volume of books hasn't really increased from decade to decade. The 50s have about the same number of books as the 60s, as the 70s. But then, who knows? This isn't everything. This is, I got to stop saying that.
I know, I do it too.
I mean, it's just, it's just books. I picked up what I thought was the most relevant books. And then, of course, I went to that massive library book sale and I got like 30 books. I sent you a bunch of books too.
Yeah, you sent me books. Yeah, mine isn't quite. I don't have quite the. I do need to put a bookshelf up to get started on.
Yeah, it's some good stuff to. Yeah, and we barely have scratched the surface. And I've
well, you think you haven't. As we talk about these, you think you've covered everything, but you really, as we delve into it, there's so much more detail.
Yeah. It just keeps going.
So I want to just mention we went to the craft. We'll get this out of the way. Went to a craft fair yesterday because that's what my wife and I do sometimes.
Yes.
And it is Christmas, or the holidays, I should say.
Yes.
And I was talking to this guy who makes knives, and I always wear a shirt to these things because I like to initiate conversation, like a small child. So I wore a shirt that said...
Did you say like a small child?
Yeah, like a small child.
Hello. You walk up to him and you go, hello.
Yeah, I have my little shirt that says Bigfoot hide and seek champion.
Uh-huh.
And and it'll initiate. I'll wear my like a SpaceX hat or something, and people will comment. And that's when I say, because I don't just just randomly, hey, do you believe in UFOs? But I like to initiate the conversation, and they were older than us, like I mentioned, and in the pre-show, and she states, I go, "Oh, do you believe in Bigfoot?" She goes, "Yeah, I believe in Bigfoot." And then she goes, "But," I go, "How about UFOs?" She goes, "He's seen one." She had her husband there, the knife maker, and he says, "Hey, yeah," he goes, "Yeah, I saw one in the '60s, and you know where San Leandro lives." Of course, we know exactly where San Leandro is.
Yeah.
And he goes, "We were fishing." I go, "Well, tell me about it." I go, "Well, I have a UFO." I go, "Do you guys listen to podcasts?" And this happens most of the time when I didn't get involved in a conversation with people that are our age or older. Most people don't listen to podcasts. It's really kind of weird. They go, "No, we don't listen to podcasts." I go, "Well, I'm a host of a podcast show called the Alien Pro Podcast." They know nothing about, so it meant nothing to them. But he goes, I go, "Well, tell me about your sighting." I go, "It'd be interesting to hear what happened." And it was him and a friend of his, and they were down in Davis, at the end of Davis Street down there. And they look up and they see a huge cylinder, and there's people and they're trying to sell stuff. And so it's kind of hard to really sit down and have, but I got as much as I could. And it was a huge cylindrical object that was moving slowly and not too far. He says it was less than a mile away. And it was moving very slowly. And then all of a sudden it did that typical thing it does. He goes, it just shot off at incredible speed and disappeared.
What year was this?
We didn't get to the exact year. I'm not sure if he even really realized the exact year it was, but it was interesting though he said that they talked to each other and said never to mention it because they don't want to be crackpots.
Was this in the 60s or the 70s or
60s?
60s.
Yeah, it was in the 60s.
Okay.
Because remember, they're older. They're probably
like they're
5-10 years older than us.
Okay.
And they're older people.
Yeah, so they were.
And him and his friends said, "We're never going to mention this because in the 60s, I don't, as young people, the way we were, we didn't care. Well, I'll talk about UFOs. I don't care." But I know there also was a underlying stigma of you don't want to really talk about it too much or people are going to think you're crazy.
Well, that's been thing. That was the thing until recently, supposedly.
Yeah. So he told his friend, "We're never going to talk about this because we don't want people to think we're nuts." So fast forward to just a couple of years ago, they had lost touch of each other. Then, probably through Facebook or whatever, and the first thing they mentioned to each other, "Remember that thing we saw?
Yeah.
The UFO?" And so he goes, "Yeah, it was fascinating. That's the first thing we said to each other. Remember that thing we saw?"
Well, that would be very memorable. Yeah, they were down at the Davis Street Pier fishing. I mean, I think we fished there a few times.
Probably, yeah. So it was kind of fascinating. That was from kind of the area we're from, and then they saw that, and I've never seen a UFO. So,
in this report, they do have sightings. There was lots of sightings in the Bay Area, and I remember some of the stuff that we've been looking at. What's the is it Moffett Field? There's the old air base.
That's the one that's down in San Jose. Yeah, Moffat's
not Moffett.
Has a giant hangar.
It's not. Yeah, there's that one. But there's also the one up in the North Bay. There's a airfield. It's I think it's near Benicia.
That's Travis.
Is it Travis? Okay, Travis so I know there was a bunch of sightings off of Travis. And
they didn't call it Travis though. They had another name for it back then. It was that'll come to me. But yeah, they called it something else before it was Travis.
Do you want to do a word from your sponsor?
Let's go ahead and do a word from my sponsor if I can find him. And our new sponsor, Orion Bank Card Services. Do you own a business and take credit cards for payments? Are your fees higher than you'd like? Not sure? Want to find out? If your answer is yes to any of these questions, check out Orion Bank Card Services. So visit orionbcs.com and let them begin the process towards saving you money to help you realize your financial goals. Once again, visit orionbcs.com and contact them today. All programs of Orion BCS are subject to terms and conditions. Visit orionbcs.com for more details. Thanks again, Ryan. And we're back.
All right. So, UFOs, 1947. This is a thickish report. And I've only read a little bit of it. I don't know how far you got into it.
Who is this guy? How do you
Blocher?
spell his name? Blocher.
I don't know. He worked at...
He's a new name.
He's a new name for you. I've seen some other stuff for him. And apparently this was written in 1967. He did this report because he's constantly talking about the failings of like the Air Force to scientifically research UFO sightings. And this was also in 1967. They have a introduction by Dr. James E. McDonald, who was an advocate for the scientific community actively investigating UFO sightings, which I guess is happening now, as we were seeing with Elizondo involved with Project Galileo. And let's see, what else is there? I think that's about it. I'm looking up Ted Blocher. Ted Blocher, man who introduced the world to flying saucers. I'm not seeing something. I know he's written a bunch of stuff. I'm just trying to see if there was a...
Well, this book is phenomenal, although, albeit, like you said, it's gigantic. And there's a lot of information in there.
Yeah, and it can be found online through NICAP.org. I'm looking... I didn't do any research on it. I think he's just basically, he's a research with NICAP. He was involved in the 60s. And they say, I don't know what he's doing now, but he does have several books published. And this is a interesting report because apparently what he did is related to his work. And I think we mentioned this last time, is that he would go around and he would go to local libraries when he was traveling for his work. And then he would look up newspapers reports for UFO sightings, specifically for 1947. And as you mentioned, there was 800 and something sightings. 850 sightings.
Do you know how many sightings there were in November? I sent you the report, but I don't know if you pulled it up yet.
You sent me a report?
I sent you my MUFON report on email.
For
so you may not have,
I haven't seen it
for November. So I'm just going to
for this November. Yeah, go ahead, tell me.
Yes, there's in the world there was 500. Reported. Now we don't know how many there were other than reported. 514, but U.S. 426, and there's various, and then they break it down by shape because they have these investigators. You too can be an investigator for MUFON. But of course, there's a small fee to
MUFON. Of course, there is.
But they have them by. It's interesting because they break it down by country. How many? India had the least, and it's interesting because we've had not as people in many people in India are listening to us as they used to. So it's interesting. But there was only one sighting. I don't think there's any correlation. But there was only one sighting reported in India. The U.S. had 425, and then it breaks it down by shape. Okay. And there's no donut shapes.
Yeah. There's
They have Saturn-like shapes.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. They got one with legs. There's a funny thing that they were talking about legs in this report. Oh, I like the shapes. Okay.
That's a really good report. I think we'll probably we're not going to read the whole thing, but and distance from the witness was also interesting. Less than 100 feet, 48 sightings were less than 100 feet. Now that's, can you imagine, and California leads the league.
For sightings?
And they have it broken. It has it broken. 45 in California. Florida, number 2 at 31. And Texas, number 3. It's funny because you're Florida.
Yeah.
I'm California, and Robert's Texas. And that's number 1, 2, 3. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Florida could be anything from seeing a space shot. My sister sent me that picture of a really nice picture from her house of the space shot, one of the SpaceX shots going up, and that was really phenomenal. I guess if you didn't know what you were looking at, that might be something unusual. If you just totally didn't pay attention to what's going on in the world, I suppose. But it was interesting, all these different the sightings, the cigar shapes, and it's interesting that the guy that talked to me at the show said it was cylindrical, and you always think of the traditional flying saucer shapes, and I always thought that's what they are, just the flying saucer, and it actually has some different shapes that are reported in a little picture next to the by shape description. It's not all the different shapes. It's interesting. There's different models.
Well, yeah.
You got the sport model. So is there different? I mean, it's just interesting that there's no cylindrical ones, but it is.
You could also say the cylindrical model is like a Tic Tac.
Could be.
Yeah, or a propane tank. I mean, you would say if you saw a propane tank like the ones they have on a house, the propane tank could be. You'd say that was cylindrical. So he may have seen a Tic Tac.
Yeah.
So
in the 60s,
Yeah. So talking about the 1947 report, I was looking at what was going on in 1947. So World War II ended September 45. We had atomic bomb test, 1945 and 1946. And people were worried about, and then the Soviets got the atomic bomb. People are worried about nuclear warfare. The start of the Cold War happened in 1947 with the National Security Act, which created the CIA, the DoD, the Joint Chiefs, and the National Security Council. And then 26 September 1947, the Air Force was created as a separate branch. The first World Series was broadcast in 6 October 1947. Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier 14 October 1947. The first practical electronic transistor was, I think, patented or developed 22 December 47. We talk about technology being transferred from UFOs, and Roswell was July, and then Bell Labs came up with a first practical model in December. So I don't know.
I don't think we were smart enough to come up with anything at least published in that many months.
I don't know. I was looking over
very slow.
Yeah, I was looking at the history of the transistor, so I don't know. Also, on March 5th, 1946, Winston Churchill gave his speech where he talked about the Iron Curtain with the closing of Eastern Europe and the sort of the world being divided into East and West with the Soviet Union and all that stuff, and the Berlin Wall came up in the 60s, though. Oh, and speaking of the 60s, did you look at that? Did you get a chance to watch that new JFK documentary?
I looked for it and I couldn't. Is it on YouTube?
It's on Showtime.
It's on Showtime.
JFK Revisited. You have Showtime?
Yes, I believe so. I'll have to check.
I think you have every cable channel available to man.
I have for what I pay, I should have. There shouldn't be anything left out.
Yeah,
we don't get. Yeah, there's one we don't get, but it's not that.
Okay, it's not on. It's on Showtime. So I just watched it.
So do you watch it?
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Well, it's Oliver Stone sort of revisiting his JFK movie in light of the information that's come out since he made the movie. The only thing I could say, well, of course, I know recently they were supposed to release more JFK documents, but that's been blocked because of COVID. That's a good excuse.
Yeah.
I'm not sorry, COVID. The zombie apocalypse.
It's yes.
The only thing I really got out of it was I think the evidence is very strong and compelling that JFK was shot from the front and the rear.
Yeah. Did he mention the three tramps?
No, I was hoping. I was looking for that because that one guy was supposed to be Chrisman, who was one of the one of the Maury Island guys. Now, Chrisman's a weird thing because Chrisman Dahl is the guy that saw these things, says he saw these things.
Right.
Chrisman was his supervisor, question mark or something, but the relationship isn't clear. And Chrisman was obviously he's some sort of asset. He's some sort of intelligence asset, which is pretty clear from his history. And the affidavit that came out with his that grand jury investigating JFK assassination in the 60s or 70s or whenever it was, he still knew Dahl, still was associated and friends with Dahl. So there's that. There's sort of that strange connection. But yeah,
it's odd because two of the Arnold and the Maury Island incidents both involved military aircraft crashing. That's also kind of unusual. I mean, unless they were just falling out of the sky.
Yeah. Well, let's say, but the Arnold thing was there was a Marine transport, and one of the motivations for Arnold to look for that is they were offering a reward for the discovery of the crash. So I can't remember. Oh. There was a $5,000 or $10,000 reward for discovering the crash. So Arnold actually had an incentive to look because, there was a nice cash incentive to do that. We should mention about the Maury Island incident, too, which happened June 21, 1947. It's also considered the first Men in Black encounter, where you have some guy, the classic Men in Black description talking to a UFO person.
Yeah, this was one guy. I think that this time it was one guy.
This was just one guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was warning off Dahl about talking about the incident. And that's just a weird. There's a whole scenario with Arnold's description and all the incidents around Maury Island, which is just strange. And we've talked about that.
Yeah, it is pretty bizarre. I don't know.
Yeah,
so 47, we got tons of
sightings. 850 sightings. I was looking over the first part this morning. Let's see what I have. This is one of the things that makes this report and these sightings unique is reading from the report. The 1947 UFO wave is perhaps the most fascinating of any to examine because of its unique position at the very beginning of the contemporary period of UFO activity in this country. There were no attitudes about UFO in June 1947. There were no preconceptions, no misconceptions, no policies by either press or public or by any official agencies, and certainly no pattern existed concerning the phenomenon by which comparison might be made. Few people recall the reports of ghost rockets over Sweden during the summer of 1946. 46. And it was only during the crest of the wave, 1947, on July 6th and 7th, that any connection was made with these earlier phenomena. A few World War II veterans who had observed Foo Fighters over Germany in the South Pacific during the war were now reminded of those earlier incidents by the widespread reports of flying saucers. But for most witnesses, the experience of observing strange aerial manifestations was completely without precedent and profoundly baffling. Which is why these reports are so interesting because, no preconceptions. The press was open to reporting things as they were happening without embellishment and making fun of the people that were seeing these sightings, which became a sort of standard operating procedure for the media at the time. One of the things that I keep seeing is they go, looking back today on the UFO sightings of June 1947, it appeared to be unmistakably evident that by the end of the month, that there was already enough evidence to justify a thorough scientific investigation into these unexplained appearances. It is understandable that such an idea occurred to scarcely anyone in mid-1947. What is so difficult to understand is why it took over 19 years, it's now been over 70 years, of continued observations and reports to get such an investigation underway. And the magnitude, the magnitude of these sightings was apparently extremely impressive at the time. There was something else.
I mean, he's got them on the map. He's marked them on the U.S. map. He's got them numbered. I mean, this is a great book. This is, I mean, there's more sightings than you can possibly even. It's got sightings after June 24th.
Yeah.
And Arnold's wasn't a flying saucer. It was kind of a croissant shaped.
Yeah. Well, it was
kind of like a croissant.
There is, in this report, there is a photo at the back of the report, which I haven't gotten to, but I was just skimming. They mentioned in the part that I'd read, the first 20 pages or so, they mentioned there's a photographic section, and there is actually a photo of this crescent-shaped object. July 7th, Phoenix, Arizona, roads, and it's like what Arnold had described. A photograph reproduced July 9th edition of the Phoenix, Arizona Republic. The claim by a Chicago publisher that all July 9 issues have been confiscated in a door-to-door search is completely without any basis in fact. That Chicago publisher is probably Ray Palmer. A few weeks after the Army Air Corps visited Rhodes and asked for copies of the photographs as well as the negatives, which Rhodes turned over to them willingly. He later reported that efforts to get them back were unsuccessful. In the Air Force files, the Rhodes sightings is termed a possible hoax. Kenneth Arnold reported, however, that when he met intelligence officer Lieutenant Frank Brown in Tacoma on July 31st, and that's one of the officers that got killed in that crash after they'd interviewed the Maury Island guys.
Oh, really?
I believe so, yeah. Brown said that Rhodes' photographs were among several we consider to be authentic, explaining that copies he had just been received at Hamilton Field. It's also interesting to note that while Rhodes himself had no luck in getting his photographs back, officers at Hamilton Field willingly gave copies to Arnold on a subsequent trip he made to that base. Those same photos given to Dr. McDonald by Arnold were lent for the purpose of reproduction in this report by Dr. McDonald. Wow. The drawings below are included to give clearer impression of the shapes of the photographs. So there, and the photograph, I mean, it's not.
What page is it?
There's no page numbers in this damn thing. It's in the back.
Oh.
It's in the far back. Just, you're going to have to scroll through it till you see photos.
Anyway, the croissant. The croissant is. I mean, maybe Roswell wasn't a saucer. Maybe because I remember one of the descriptions of the Roswell saucers was that one side was like completely destroyed. I'm thinking maybe that was one of those Arnold sauce, not a saucer. They call it a saucer, but it's kind of a croissant shape.
Croissant.
Yeah,
that could be. I was just looking on my bookshelf. Is I'd have to move around. I was going to grab one of the Roswells. Yeah, yeah, that's a good observation. That's a distinct possibility that it wasn't destroyed. It was mainly intact, but it just looked different than their expectations.
And was Brown
But
offed on purpose with
I
this
don't.
crash thing?
I
Because
want
they
to.
had the. I'm going to go out on the limb right now.
No, I want to say
Maybe
no.
well, what about because the only people that survived, because we're going to make a movie out of this, right? The only
Yeah,
person
there you
that
go.
survived were the navigator and the
Well, it was the
engineer or whatever.
hitchhiker and the engineer.
But they both had, didn't they both have? Yeah, okay. So I'll go with that. Hitchhiker engineer. They go up, and they double tap the pilot, co-pilot, and then jump out of the plane.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I believe it's just the plane failed, and I think it's the plane had just had, I think, new engines put in. And if it hadn't been if it hadn't had extensive maintenance done on the plane just before they took it off, I would say there's probably something wrong. But since the maintenance had been done, they're saying that a flange was left off the engine, so it was like the exhaust was like heating the wing up. Although you have to ask the question, why didn't it destroy the plane on the flight up? If this was,
I guess you would have to ask that question.
Yeah,
it got hot enough going out, but
after a really brief flight, they were only in the air for like 10 or 15 minutes. So there's that question. All right, so my gut reaction is no. It's just because of whatever. But yeah, there are some interesting questions. I think that.
Maybe we should be looking into the two people that jumped out a little closer. Who were they? Who were those guys?
Yeah.
Maybe we should be also with Maury Island. I still want to know what happened to the kid. I know he ended up at the kid whose arm got broken mysteriously. They probably grounded the boat. That's probably when it happened. But, they interviewed him that he's a chef or something, a cook at some roadside restaurant in Montana, and doesn't even remember how he got there. But they hardly ever talk about that. There's no.
I don't know how
I know you perused a lot of this. How did this? And again, everybody's probably dead. He's probably not even. We might be around, but I don't know. But why aren't these things investigated? I mean, if I'm going to talk to all the witnesses, we'll talk to everybody. But and the kid wasn't so young he wouldn't figure out what was going on. Did he see flying saucers? Did they drop out the material? Yeah. That's a good questions, but you got to remember too that this was heavily painted as a hoax. I mean, they confessed to the FBI, say no, this was a hoax. But what the interesting part is the role that Dahl plays in this. Why is there an intelligence asset so heavily involved in this scenario? And it's Dahl and the other guy.
Well, Dahl isn't Dahl. I don't think Dahl was an asset. The other guy, Chrisman, was the intelligence asset, and he ties in with JFK's assassination. And that's I never thought about the JFK stuff until you talked about it, and now I'm just like, that's some serious stuff happened there, and I think that changed the whole course of the United States in the future. Was that one single assassination? So,
because you can't do anything. It doesn't matter who you are; you can be gotten to.
Yeah,
no matter how high up. I mean, that's the tone that got set.
Yeah. So
I don't know if that could happen. Can that happen today?
Okay. So, yes, it has happened today, and we've seen it happen with two presidents.
Yeah, but I mean today, 2021. Do you think that could happen?
We saw
with the information age, and people can't shut up. People aren't scared as they are of the government.
It's become harder. So we saw it with our most recent president. There was a big campaign to discredit him with a lot of strangeness involved in that, and it's just recently fallen apart. And if you go back, the funniest thing now is stuff is coming out about Nixon, and how they're talking about how Nixon was framed so he would be forced to resign.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
Yeah. So it's like, God. But JFK, I mean, I never thought of anything about the JFK assassination. I didn't think it was a big deal. But, just a single nutty guy. But looking at the Zapruder film and some of the weirdness around his autopsy, the craziness around his autopsy. Yeah, no, and you can see it on the Zapruder film. He was shot from the front. I mean, you can't deny that. You can see,
he went forward, then back.
Well, you can see material from his head landing on the deck lid of the car.
Yeah,
and his wife,
it's in his belly.
His wife jumps up on the deck lid and is like grabbing pieces of him. This is awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So So there's some weird stuff going on. But the buildup and the sightings in 1947 are fascinating because you have all these preconceived notions hadn't been developed yet. And one of those preconceived notions came about in 1950 in one of my favorite movies. Well, it's a little slow these days, but The Day the Earth Stood Still, you know that movie. Everybody knows that movie.
Oh, I love them. Yeah, the original.
But
Michael Ramey or whatever.
Yeah, but one of the things that sort of embedded itself in the cultural mythology surrounding UFOs was the seamless silver bodysuit. So now all the space aliens that people say they see are have these seamless silver bodysuits. Everybody's got or maybe that came from the I don't see how it could, but maybe that idea came from the Roswell stuff into Hollywood.
What year was The Day the Earth Stood Still? I'm going to look that up.
1950. And to add yeah?
The girl that was the witness with Einstein, she said that they wore jumps. She said bluish. I think she said bluish or gray.
But seamless jumpsuits?
Seamless, and shoes that just appeared to be, part of, they were fitted right to their feet, and, they didn't have laces. They were just kind of slipped on.
Okay.
And, it's just, that's what's her, but still jumpsuits, whether the color or, it's really bizarre that, the silver jumpsuit was
It's a standard space alien wear these days. And Day of the Earth Stood Still, 1950, that's, I think when everybody just sort of came out in that movie. And we've all seen that movie. I've seen it. I should watch it again. It's a good movie. It's a little slow these days, but it's a good movie.
Oh, it's very good.
Keanu Reeves did a remake on it. I haven't seen the whole one.
Yeah, that one was, of course, not as good. But then there was Earth versus the Flying Saucers in 1956.
And that was the one we just watched recently. Was that the one with the sonic gun and the people trapped underground because they bombed them? That was a good movie.
No, that wasn't this. Well, this one was the one where they figured out that the people in the entities in the flying saucer they played the audio really slow by accident because the battery was going dead, and figured out trying to communicate.
That's the movie I'm talking about, where they had the sonic guns around the Capitol, and they're running around. Yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah, on the trailers. Yeah. That's that one.
Yeah.
They shot the UFOs down with the sonic gun because it disrupted their. That was a very good movie.
Yeah, that was a surprisingly good movie. When I made myself sit down and watch it. Although I watched it in color, which made it easier. So
I love black and white though. I watch black and white.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I didn't like the colorization thing that came about, but then when I actually like it now. So So the buildup to the sightings of 1949 and some of the things, he says the buildup of the sightings, July 1 to 3rd, says in one sighting alone, over 100 spectators at an amateur ball game in Cincinnati saw two of the disc move slowly over the field in the evening of July 2nd. And that's one of the cases that we can probably talk about. Another interesting report describes the landing seen by a family of 10 in northern Idaho of 8 huge objects. This report should have been among those in the Air Force files, but it had been reported to intelligence officers from the Spokane Army Air Base. An intensive air search was carried out by 2 missions of the National Guard's 116th Fighter Group. Local sheriff's deputy also made a ground search, but since no apparent trace of the objects was found, a report was probably never forwarded to Wright Field in Dayton.
Yeah, Wright Patterson. That's my base.
Yeah.
That's where I think everything was taken. I don't think you know how I feel about Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar.
I don't know, Bob. Like you said, I think Bob was a radiation investigator more than a UFO reverse engineer.
Bob.
But I don't want to get on Bob's bad side. I know he listens, so
Yes, he does. We know he does. But one thing about Lazar is there are, as mentioned a bunch of times, there are definite aspects to his story that are true. So the thing you can say is that he did have access to this facility for a period of time. And that's a fact. And then there's other interesting things. But then, always these things always have questions. There's some more things. And then the report talks about the beginning of the critique of people seeing the UFOs. There was a editorial in the Portland Oregonian, which was titled Quack Quack.
Oh.
Yeah. So, then there's a bunch of contradictory reports. Then he talks about in the report there was a July 4th deluge. And we should say that Roswell was June 2nd to June 8th, based on our limited review of the material so far. July 4th, Twin Falls, Idaho, 60 picnickers watched 3 formations of more than 35 objects flying overhead. Later in that evening, at Lake Hauser Lake near Spokane, more than 200 persons saw a lone disc in the sky overhead. This is all on July 4th. 88 specific sightings were found spread over an area comprising 24 states and 1 Canadian process. Over 400 people from all walks of life. 2/3 of these observations were placed when daylight hours or dusk. This is July 4th, 1947. That's just some of the sightings.
The day before Roswell. Now, I have a question question. Brazel, who's the for the Roswell thing. I mean, they've got a thing here where the farmer, the rancher, I should say, he took pieces of the spaceship and he stored them in his shed. I know we were kind of going back and forth on that, and now I'm looking at your book. How big is this thing? Or did he just get hunks of it that were broken?
You mean the is this the balloon or the guy that was supposedly towed?
Brazel, who is the property owner of the crash site.
Well, there's some confusion, although we haven't really gone into the material for Roswell stuff. The thing I saw was there was reports, couple newspaper reports of a farmer dragging a saucer into his barn.
Yeah.
And then I think there's this guy that was gathering fragments from whatever had crashed. And what I think that we're seeing, and there's that later report that came out by that one physicist, or book that was written by the physicist, there may have been 2 crashes in the area. To add more, there was one where there was a ship, there was like the skip where it hit and bounced, and then there was like another crash somewhere else. So there's kind confusion as to the number of events and the specifics around the Roswell area. And the Roswell's is a range of dates so far, although we've barely touched on the information in these books and stuff, of July 2nd through July 8th. So are you there? Oh, he's frozen. He's frozen. Are you there? He's calculating. Can you hear me? You've gone.
I can hear you.
Okay, what are you doing? You're doing a calculation.
No, I was just typing to you. You're frozen.
Oh, you no, no, you're frozen.
No, you're frozen.
You're frozen.
I didn't check my internet speed before we started. Remember, we were supposed to do that.
God, doing it now. No, you're frozen. It's working now.
Okay, well, you cut that part out.
I'm gonna leave it in. It's all right.
And we almost made it the entire hour.
Well, I kept talking, so it was fine. And then I thought you were.
Yeah, I'm watching. I go, well, I hope he's talking. And he's gonna go, Art, do you have anything to say? I don't know. I can't hear you.
My internet is slow, but it's not dead. It's not great. I'm running 20.
Ours was after we did what you said, reset the deal in there. It speeded up quite quickly, and Debbie had less.
Uh-oh.
Is that a phone call?
Yeah, that's my message noise. It's
Oh, that's me sending you the message. I can't hear you. You're frozen. I'm a duck. Is that a duck?
No, it's frogs. There's these little frogs that hang out here in the wet weather, and I just recorded them and made a thing out of it. Oh, yeah, no, you're frozen. Okay, so now it's working again. It's not a big deal. It only froze up for a second. My computer is good. You're still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Yeah, anyway, so I kept talking. I don't think that's a big deal. I got a little confused.
I don't know what you said, but it
doesn't matter. You can listen to it.
I can listen to it like everybody else. I don't know what was said. I was there, but I don't know.
So July 5th, the front page banner headlines covered the sightings. Local papers featured reports of sightings coming from nearby areas. Portland, Oregon reported an airline sighting. There's a photo of Seattle photograph taken near Seattle by Coast Guardsman Frank Ryman was given top billing in many newspapers as graphic evidence of the reality of the reported objects. Oh, that photo, that's also in this report. You can dig through the back and you can see that. That just gave a little white spot, sort of a saucer-shaped spot. And I'm screwing this all up. There's no page numbers on these things, and I'm like moving things all over the place.
Because the one you sent me has page. I mean, when you flip it, it has a page on the bottom. It doesn't do that with. Or do you have the actual book?
I just printed it out. There's no page numbers.
And then the one you gave me, I got it on electronic.
Well, you have,
and you can just.
Well,
I think you gave me that, didn't you?
Yeah, but I print it out. I like printing stuff out. So now I'm screwed it all up.
Write on it.
I've screwed it all up. Front page banners.
We'll be talking about it again because this thing's 1 million pages long.
Oh, it is, and I want to talk about some of the stuff. Voice of confusion, and I think that's pretty itch. Oh, there's a good thing here. I actually marked it. And then the voice of confusion is one of the sections in here where they're talking about. And we should wrap this up pretty soon.
Yeah, we're getting close.
Yeah, we're getting close. But it's different people coming in, different authorities. We'll talk about that. But here at the end, before we wrap it up, there was this one statement. The fourth case, which was non-military, described the landing and ascent of a small disk near Tempe, Arizona, during the afternoon. For reasons unknown, the folder containing this report at Project Blue Book was empty. When examined for the purposes of this report, it is listed as insufficient information in the official files. Another landing report not among those in the Air Force files describes a brief landing and ascent of another small disk seen near Pocatello, Idaho at dawn. The object remained in an upright attitude like a wheel as it touched down and then took off. And there's more, and then I'm going to spend the next hour sorting this thing out because there's no friggin' page numbers. Oh!
I agree with you. I like the paper because I can things and I can write on it.
Yeah, and I'm doing that. I want to mention, too, did you get the Quintanilla's book? I sent you the link for it, I think.
What's the name of it?
I don't know. I have no idea. It's UFOs, an Air Force Dilemma by Lieutenant Colonel Hector Quintanilla Jr., former chief Project Blue Book. I think I sent you the link for it. It's in the archive.org, and you can link it directly through Hector Quintanilla's page on Wikipedia. I'll send you if you didn't get it, I'll send you the link again.
Send me the link and then I'll load it.
Oh, I might have texted it to you. Should I email it? Email.
Yeah, email would be better that way. I can convert it.
Yeah, you can get it in your device. But yeah, I was trying to figure out how to get this, and I happened to read Quintanilla's Wikipedia page. And there's a link for this in there. And the Discovery Institute has, I guess, put it on line and made it freely available for people to read. I really think that this is something we should look at. I'm curious. The poor guy. I used to think that this guy, what did he do to get that job? I mean, who did he piss off to get that job?
Yeah.
So we'll find out. It'll be interesting. And next week, we're going to continue with the report of UFO Wave of 1947.
We may be doing, I think it's finally, we'll be able to get together. We're going to get together with Robert at the beginning of the week sometime to go over some things. And then I think he still wants to do Men in Black, and he still wants to make sure he's included on some episodes. So we want to do that.
Well, hopefully we'll do Men in Black next week, and I'll finish reading the book that I'm reading on it, which is which will be the British viewpoint on Men in Black, and you and Robert can cover the U.S. point part. So let's, let's wrap it up. I will sort my papers, which are a disaster, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. We welcome comments, questions, or requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook at alienprobe.net, Twitter and Instagram at alienprobepod. Also, catch us on YouTube. Still audio right now, but we're getting some video on there as well. Thanks to our senior producer, Robert Anthony. Thanks again, Dr. Bill, for joining me, I should say.
All right.
My personality today. I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.